Hey there, welcome to 3D Sorcery. My name's Matt, and on this channel we're going to make cool things in 3D and 3D print them so you can print them out, paint them, and have cool stuff for your desk or your projects or whatever you're working on. I come from a 3D background, been doing models for years for video games and VR and all kinds of projects. But most recently I've really been getting into making my own custom action figures. Oh, as arms are falling off. As well as, I do some tabletop models. Here's some robot stuff I've made. And basically what I aim to do on this channel is just kind of show you my process. I'm going to make cool craft projects, toy projects, tabletop projects, pretty much anything craft, toy, or tabletop model related in 3D. You can follow along with me. I'll use programs like Maya and ZBrush to create that content, and then we'll export it out, we'll 3D print it, and then we'll throw some paint on it to kind of finish it up and have a really cool model that you can use. One of the things I aim to do differently on this channel is everything I create I want to give to you, the viewer. So when it's done, I'll have a download link where you can sign up on my site and download the models that we do. So if you want to follow along when we do painting, or even just paint it and show things off, maybe send me an Instagram or whatever, I'd super appreciate that as well. Beyond that, to kick things off for this channel, I've been a huge fan of werewolves my entire life. Werewolves is one of those creatures that just, I don't know what it is, but it speaks to me, and I've loved werewolves ever since I was a little kid. Ever since I remember seeing American Werewolf in London, I think it just resonated inside me. Werewolves are awesome. Everything from obscure werewolf movies to like Dog Soldiers or Bad Moon, anything and few and far between, the Howling series, you name it, I love werewolves. So I figured what better way to start this channel than to, create a werewolf. So what we're going to do is we are going to make a werewolf head today. We'll start in ZBrush, we'll sculpt the whole head out. I'm going to try to go from memory and create what I think a cool werewolf head should look like. Give it some expression, something cool. We'll go through the process, we'll make it, we'll export it out, we'll bring it into a slicer program, and then throw it on a resin printer. We'll print it out, we'll paint it up, and then you'll have a very cool werewolf head to enjoy. Now this is something you could use if you're into custom toy making. You could use the werewolf head to maybe put on a custom toy, or if you want to make your own werewolf model, you can go ahead and do that as I'm knocking you over toys. I hope you enjoy. Again, this is going to be the first episode, and if you like this kind of content every week, I'm going to be trying to do the exact same thing. So a new model every week. We'll jump in, we'll make it, we'll print it. Maybe even a couple videos for bigger models. Who knows? We'll see where this channel goes, but I'm excited to start this, and I hope you enjoy. So let's get started. So to get started, I started with a simple sphere here in ZBrush and just started pushing and pulling with the move tool until I basically got it in the desired shape I was looking for. You can see I'm just kind of pulling out part of the model here to try to resemble some type of a snout, and then smoothing it out, occasionally masking the shapes and just moving and pulling them to kind of get the desired werewolf shape we're looking for, right? So moving around, just kind of exploring, kind of finding, what works, what doesn't in particular elements, and just trying to make it look cool. Trying to get that nice furrowed brow that you can see on a werewolf, working on that snout and the nose, and just trying to make it as cool as possible. On the side there, I always like to pull out little tufts of hair because I think that kind of gives it that general werewolf shape. Now again, I'm just going from memory here, so I'm trying to decide, okay, what does a werewolf look like, right? And using my imagination to kind of start driving the shape. Now, I love doing these conceptual modeling pieces like this because I really think it helps you explore your creative potential as an artist and also work on your sculpting abilities as you get farther into it. Typically, when I do something like a werewolf head like this, I'll start with the top part of the head, really kind of get that in the desired shape, and most of it is essentially just using the move tool to kind of go back and forth and just pull and push different areas of that sphere until I get that desired shape, and then mask out certain elements that are needed to get things like tufts of hair and ears and eyes and the snout and all those different pieces. But I do like to do it in two separate pieces, so I'll start with this top piece and just kind of pull out the different elements that are needed, like the top part of the head, like you can imagine like the upper jaw. And then once I'm finished with that, I'll move on to a separate piece, which will be the lower piece. And I might even use things like the Z-spheres to kind of build out a jaw for the bottom of it, and then just fill it in with another sphere and just kind of push and pull the digital clay until it kind of gets into that desired shape I'm looking for. So it's kind of a bit exploratory, but it seems to work for me. Here's where I like to switch things up. Usually I'll change the material of the clay that I'm working with into something. I think I use the cavity material. It's like a madcap gray cavity, I think. Just shows a little bit more of the detail, and I'll go ahead and add some spheres in for the eyes, and maybe I'll even use a little poly paint on those just to color them up to something that's a little more werewolf-esque, like some yellow eyes. And then just start sculpting around those eye cavities, right? Like really defining those shapes and trying to get those really, really dialed in. Start adding some more details here and there, start adding some ear details, just little bits that kind of give it that werewolf shape, right? So I just kind of take my time, go around the model, and just really, really start tightening up a lot of those different elements that really kind of define exactly what that werewolf look is I'm going for. Nice to get that nice furrowed brow, a little bit of a furrowed lip right there, just kind of little elements, and then just start roughing in that hair. So you can see right here, I'm starting to come in and I'm just roughing in where the strands of hair would be. And one thing you have to consider when you're doing a 3D model like this is when you think about hair, especially on something like a toy, right? You're never going to have these like little strands of hair. They're always going to be kind of clumped together. So you want to think in terms of chunks, right? And try to make those chunks look as good as possible for the hair that's coming out. Now, it's a werewolf, so it's going to be a little gangly, so I just tried to just rough that in. You can see here, I'm just coming in and starting to get the bottom part of the jaw done, just pulling out those regions just by masking, and then using the move tool to kind of pull those out, and then the clay tubes as well as the just the clay tool to kind of add a little bit more in there, especially for the gum line that's at the top right here, where I think eventually I'll be putting in some teeth. So you can see I'm just kind of building that out, smoothing it out as I go, and just kind of pushing and pulling. Of course, this video is sped up, so it's not full time, but you know, I'm doing my best here to explain exactly what was going on or what I was thinking of when I did that particular piece. But hopefully this gives you an idea of exactly how I put it together. I know it is sped up, but it's pretty cool. I come in here, and then this is where I love to use when you're building a jawbone, it's kind of nice to use something like the Z-sphere. So you can see I threw a Z-sphere in the middle of his body, or his head right there. And I just pull those out to really kind of define the shape of exactly where that jawline is going to be. And I've used Z-spheres since the beginning of ZBrush. So it's one of those things that it just allows me to kind of move the shape around and really kind of dial in that right there. I'm just kind of like that jaw that I'm looking for, right? You can see I'm just kind of starting to get that shape, starting to think about how I want that shape to look on that werewolf. And then I use the adaptive skin to just kind of make some clay around it, give it some shape, and then I'll eventually merge it into the body. So here's one of those sections where I think we've pretty much got our werewolf head all dialed in terms of how we want it to look, but now we're really focusing on those details, and specifically things like the teeth. This is a good time to go in with something like the Dam Standard brush or the Damien Standard brush to get in there and really start defining out all of those little elements, as well as the lips, the hair, right? We can just start carving in all those little details that make up all these nice chunks that we're working with, right? So you can see I've got my shape all dialed in, but now I'm really starting to just kind of flesh out all those little elements that I can go in and fine tune to really make look cool, right? Little pulls of skin, little waves of hair. You know, it's a werewolf, so we want it to have that, you know, kind of gnarly, gangly look, right? We wanted to have it look like it, you know, morphed out of some type of a human originally, and it's just been pulled and stretched, and hair is just kind of sprouting out all over the place. So this is that time I go through and I do that, right? I just start putting in all those little details and just kind of let my pen glide around the wolf, and I use you know, a drawing pen tablet, which makes it much easier to do sculpting, but just go in and just start filling out all those little elements. You know, originally I start symmetrically, so, you know, when I first get this going, I'll have like a symmetrical look to it, but the farther I get into it, I'll start to add some asymmetry details. So we've made it into Lychee Slicer. That's typically the slicing program I like to use for resin printing. And I brought my resin. I brought my wolf head in here from ZBrush just as an OBJ, and I'm just kind of sizing it according to what I think would probably be a good size for the actual wolf head. I typically use the Elegoo Saturn for a lot of the printing that I do, so it does give me a nice surfaced area for me to print some different 3D models. So on this guy, I'm just going to line it up with probably about 3 of these heads, so I can not waste so much resin, but at least get a couple of them printed, and so I can mess around with them. And then we're going to send that off to the printer. Before I do that, though, we need to set some supports. So you can see right here, I'm using medium supports, just using the standard kind of automated method that Lychee has. And then I add a couple heavy supports in there just to kind of hold that head in place. Do those on the back side for where the back of the head would be, the base of the neck. So just kind of adding a couple more supports in there to kind of keep the shape of that back part. And when I'm done, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll add a raft to the bottom of this that will just kind of help support the thing. What I'm doing is just going around and adding some different supports to any of these little tufts that are just kind of floating out there. We don't want to have any pieces, not evolve properly when the resin cures as that platform goes up and down. So just kind of helping support some of the different pieces that are on there. And then it's actually looking pretty good. I think we're good to go with that. Let's see, a couple different more in here. Put one there, Let's see, any more I want to put on here? Just kind of analyze the model, go around. That looks good. We're gonna go to our rafts, throw in a standard raft with a brim, and let's just add a couple more of these. We'll put one there. Go ahead and duplicate it. We'll put another one in the middle, and let's go ahead and make one more. And we'll go ahead and put that over there. Perfect. This looks like it's all ready to print. Time to send this to the slicer and let this thing do its magic. So at this point the print is done, and after a couple hours later I'm going to pull the lid off here and you can take a look at some of the nice prints we got off this werewolf head. So we put 3 on the platen. Let's take a look at it underneath here. And we can see we've got some pretty nice prints. Now you'll notice when they first come off, they're always going to look a little gelatinous, and that's just from the excess resin that kind of sits over the top of them. But if you go ahead and take like a pry tool, so you have one of these little scrapers, and I'll come in and I'm going to try to get these ones each off here. Just kind of lightly press them so they don't go flying when you try to get them off. And typically I'll just lean my platen to the side, just like you see, and just go from the top and just try to get that, wedge that scraper underneath. And it'll just kind of pop each one of these off, as so. Just pop each one off, and they should come off there. There we go. And just pick them up and throw them in some isopropyl alcohol. I like to have a little bit of a container next to me with that, and I'll just pop them right in there just to kind of get that excess resin off of them, just to clean them up. After that, we'll get into the next phase. So really liking how these werewolf heads turned out. I like the detail I put in it. You can really see the hair and just kind of the expression and the teeth really, really well. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to do a really simple paint test on one of these just to see the paint application, show you my process of kind of putting paint together on these guys and just seeing how it comes out. So I'm outside with my little makeshift paint area that I've set up here. I'm just using some MDF boards with my favorite method of priming. Just using classic old Rust-Oleum paint. Use that just to get a nice little base coat on this. But basically what I do is I spray it with a little light mist of that, and then I'll take it inside and throw a quick zenithal highlight on it with some airbrush, and maybe just touch it up with some paint. So how do we do it? All right, shake up a can. Just some nice even coats. Get it nice and even on each side. Let it dry. We'll bring it in and get some coats of paint on it. So I started here by putting on a light zenithal highlight, just using some white paint out of my airbrush and just kind of getting a nice coverage all over the whole thing. I'm not going to go crazy on painting it. And then I just kind of experimented with a variety of washes. I think I started with a gray wash here, and I wasn't too thrilled with how it was turning out, but then, you know, just kind of added some coverage, gave it a little bit of dimension, starting to kind of shape up to something. Then I moved on to some Army Painter soft tone wash, which gave it a nice brown tone to it, and I was actually really digging how that looked, so I just started to apply that all over the model. Now I am by no means the best painter at all, but I do what I can to at least get things looking at least halfway decent, and then came in with some paint on the eyes and made those just pop a little bit. I really like red eyes on werewolves for some reason. I know it's either red or yellow for me. It's one way or the other. I think red has a lot more rage in it, obviously, so kind of went with that approach and added some nice red paint. I think that's pure red from Army Painter. Then came into the teeth and used a little bit of a bone color on the teeth there, and just kind of went through and added a little bit of acrylic here and there just to kind of get that paint all over and just fill in coverage on both sides of the the head there just to kind of get all those teeth painted. Nice like bone yellowish teeth, a little bit worn. This paint looks great too when you put a wash on it as well. So come back in with that Army Painter wash and really kind of just get in all those little cracks and crevices, and it really pulls out the detail. You can see in the teeth right there how they just pop. It looks awesome, especially if you're painting like a creature that has like just really bony teeth. Looks really cool. I think my teeth were fully dry on that side, but there was a little bit of bleeding. I can always go back and clean that up. But it turned out pretty good. I mean, this was just a really quick brush on of paint, just, taking like a little bit of time just to get something together that looks cool, and I like how it turned out. It had a really cool look to it, so I'm just gonna leave it as that for now, and I'll probably go back to it and fine tune it, but nice quick paint job. I really enjoyed making this cool little werewolf head. It was fun to just dive into ZBrush and just kind of conceptual sculpt something from memory that kind of resembles or harkens back to the werewolves that I used to like when I was a kid from all the movies. I think it was successful. I like to call it successful. It looks pretty cool. If you dig it and want to see more things like this, please leave some suggestions in the comments below. I'm going to be making new stuff every week, whether it be small little pieces for your own projects or complete characters and models, and maybe even some tabletop creations or even game models. I'll be doing all kinds of stuff. But if you like this, please let me know in the comments below, or you want to see more things like it. Thanks again for joining me. I was glad I could at least spend some time to make something cool that's werewolf related, of course. So anyways, my name's Matt. Thanks for joining me. This is 3D Sorcery, your source for cool 3D stuff.